Professor Lewis identified 3 ways in which the West blames itself for the conflict via pragmatism, multiculturalism, and altruism, all versions, he said, of cognitive evasion, variations of the idea that it is all our fault, when actually, as the rest of his remarks make clear, and as our next speaker will also make clearer, there are very good reasons from the perspective of Islamic jihadists themselves for why they hate us, that have nothing to do with what we have done or what we could do or stop doing in order to ameliorate this conflict. There is a core assumption that is fundamentally wrong, that they hate us because of our own actions rather than that they hate us for reasons of their own over which we have no control. And what are those reasons? Professor Lewis explained very cogently why we need to and how we can, following historical precedents, limit the propagation of political Islam in schools and in governments in Islamic countries should the opportunity arise to do so. And he said that the threat cannot be contained unless schools stop teaching jihad. Now, this may cause some cognitive dissonance among some who are here or some who are following along. We'll hear about this through the media because, of course, in the mainstream media, the common understanding is that jihad is an interior spiritual struggle within the soul of a Muslim believer to conform his life to the will of Allah, and that only those who twist and hijack this peaceful concept connect it in any way with violence. The next speaker will address this question directly and detail how and to what extent that formulation may be accurate and how it may be, and indeed is, damagingly and dangerously misleading. Dr. David Bukay teaches in the Political Science Department of the University of Haifa, specializing in the Arab-Israeli conflict, inter-Arab relations, and the Palestinian question, as well as international terrorism and fundamental Islam, theoretical issues and political applications in the Middle East, and much more. And so, to shed some light upon jihad and dawah and the Islamic strategy, the Islamic goals that are unconnected necessarily with American or Israeli foreign policy, please welcome Dr. David Bukay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We are all well acquainted with Jihad, with its host manifestations. The horrific terror in Mumbai exemplifies the latest example, reared up its ugly face and ugly head, proving the globalization of Jihad, of Islamic terrorism, and its apocalyptic aims to bring us all back to their 7th century future, desert. However, the atrocious activities of jihad should not mislead and disorient us. The free world's most lethal enemy is dawah. It is a propagation of Islam, the concept of missionary activity, of how to approach the infidel in moderate, tender, graceful ways. It appears in Surah 16, verse 125. And it is an invitation to all human beings to believe in Islam as a world supreme religion. Surah 14, verse 44. While we can win over all these sorts of terrorism because we are stronger and smarter, the dawah is our secretive real enemy, which we even unaware of. It is a cultural strategy aimed at toppling our democratic liberal regime and destroying our freedom from inside, infiltrating our technology and society's fabrics and annihilating them from within, and bringing us to captivity under the totalitarianism of Islam. Contrary to jihad, dawah is executed by changing our minds and our behavior, a broad term that includes a host of tactics and means to deceive, to cheat, to mislead us by disinformation. What are the cultural, religious bases for the dawah? First, Allah deceives the infidels and the hypocrites. This appears in 3 verses in the Quran. Surah 4, verse 142, Surah 8, verse 30, and Surah 86, verses 15 to 16. It appears even in Surah 10, verse 21. This is the best example for the believers' behaviors and attitudes to follow. If Allah deceives the infidels, it is not only allowed but commanded for the believers. Second, lie as a strategy. Muslims are allowed to lie for Islam's sake. We find in Sahih Bukhari, quote, Muhammad said, a man who brings peace to the community of Islam, making up good words or saying good nice things, though untrue, does not lie. Unquote. Sahih Bukhari, another Sahih Bukhari, quote, Ali narrated, when I say something unrelated to Muhammad, it might be very well a lie, so that I deceive Muhammad's enemy. Unquote. Al-Ghazali, in his book Ihya Ulumuddin, speaking in his means to achieve objectives. When it is possible to achieve an aim by lying, it is permissible to lie. Third, it's a key principle. It appears in Surah 3, verses 29. Literally, taqiyya means dissimulation, concealing one's belief. However, in the Sunnah, the accurate definition is diplomacy, a strategy to accomplish Islamic interest with large spectrum of policies and attitudes, how to deceive and mislead the kuffar. Jalaluddin as-Suyuti narrated Ibn Abbas, taqiyya is uttering of the tongue, while the heart is comfortable with faith. Sorry, I have to bring. Ibn Sa'd, Kitab al-Tabakat al-Kubra. It is permissible to speak words of unbelief when taqiyya is mandatory. Fourth, kitman. It is telling only part of the truth. This is very important because in practice, a Muslim is allowed to freely deny any part of Islam if it influences the kuffar and changes their mind. He can swear allegedly to the United States Constitution or to the Israeli Knesset. But since Islam comes first, his oath does not bind. Again, Sahih al-Bukhari, Muhammad said, a Muslim who swears false oaths by the God of another religion, he is not obliged to fulfill that promise because he cannot be bound by a faith he does not hold. It is important to note that like many other attitudes and policies, taqiyya, kitman, and lies were formed within the Arab culture of tribalism, of warfare and conflict. And Islam only institutionalized it as a religious commandment. Moreover, in Arab culture, they were means of warfare tactics, but today they use it as a diplomatic strategy. Let us elaborate a few examples to this sophisticated strategy. Example 1, Islam is a religion of peace. This is the Islamic main dawah strategy in the West. However, Islam came into being as a fighting religion. Muhammad imposed its authority by means of military power and brutally drawn swords. Islam conquered vast areas from India to Spain by Jihad war and Islamized and Arabized all their territories. The Muslim ideal era is the reign of the righteous Caliph al-Khulafa al-Rashidun between the years 632 and 661. But this era exactly reveals the brutality of Islamic colonialist expansionism, displays its ethnic cleansing policies, and exhibits the vast conversion by Islamizing and Arabizing the occupied territories. Moreover, to observe the brutal anarchy and savagery of Arab Islamic polity, one has to